Hello? Can you guys hear me fine? Hey, hi everybody. Hello Barcelona. Welcome to Bootiful JHipster with Spring Boot and Vue.js. How many of you here already use Vue.js before? Few? How many of you love that? Okay, yeah, a few hands, great. How many of you know about JHipster? Okay, how many of you love that? Okay, few hands, great, thank you. So yeah, a little bit about me just before we start in the session. I'm Sendil Kumar. You can reach me at this Twitter handle. I'm basically from southern part of India, Tamil Nadu, and I'm currently living in the Netherlands. I work at a company called Zebia Labs, where we released a periodic table for DevOps. I'm a full stack developer there. I work on the entire application stack there. And I'm also a core dev team member at JHipster. I'm a big fan of open source, and I love open source, contributing towards it, and I'm passionate about it. So if you guys want to start with open source, start learning stuffs in open source, just reach out to me. I will try to help you guys. Okay, so what we're going to see today, of course, we'll see something about Spring Boot. Everybody knows about Spring Boot, right? Who here haven't used Spring Boot before? One? Okay, great. And we'll see a small demo in Spring Boot. It's nothing, it's a simple demo, but I'll try to write in Kotlin, a live demo, something like that. And then we'll see what Vue.js is all about. And we'll try to generate a Vue.js application, and then connect this Vue.js application with the Spring Boot application, and then try and see how it works together. And finally, we will showcase, I will showcase what JHipster is all about, and then a demo with JHipster, how you can generate a full stack application with JHipster, with Vue.js in the front end. So that's what we are going to do today. Spring Boot. So what is Spring Boot? Come on, everybody used it, right? Sorry? Okay. that makes sense, right? Yeah. So Spring Boot actually makes it very easy and simple. Everybody knows here Spring Boot, so I'm not gonna go deep dive into it. It's like it embeds all the server for you. You can choose a server, and that helps you to create production-ready application as well as testing or booting up your application much more faster. And it does a lot of automatic configuration, which sometimes help you. But if you want to drill down and make sure that you have to have more performance and take more performance out of Spring Boot, you have to like remove those automatic configurations and make sure that you have customized configuration. So that's what Spring Boot is all about. It makes it really easy to develop web-based applications, Spring or Java web applications. So let's go and try a basic Spring Boot application. So what I'm going to do is like I'm just going to download the repository, or actually download some basic thing from start.spring.io. And I'm just going to add in certain dependencies like web, data JPA, data REST, and H2. I'm using a Kotlin because it makes it very easy for us to write it in a live demo project. And I'm using a Gradle type, and I'm just giving a name as blog app. Just do this thing. So it creates an application for me, so I can go ahead and open this application in my IntelliJ. How many of you use IntelliJ? How many of you still using Eclipse? Ooh. Emacs? Nobody? Okay. Oh, you're using Emacs? No? Okay. Oh, wow. Let's start that. So just imported the application. It's a normal Spring Boot application, nothing fancy in it. Okay. Come on, open. So is it visible at the back? Is it okay? Or do you need to, okay, a bit more. How would you increase the font size here? Oh. Okay, is it fine now? No? Okay. Yes. Yes, I agree. Come on. Anybody knows the shortcut for this? Nope. Sorry? Okay. Okay. Is it okay now? Okay, thank you. Okay, so yes, fine. So what I'm going to do is like create a simple entity, a blog entity. That's it. So gladly, I have some live code template here. So what I've done, I've just created a data class with Kotlin, and I just import all those things. It's a plain entity with a block with all those variables or field names in it. And then what I have to do next is, like, since I've also incorporated data JPA, I just have to go and add a repository. So it's like an interface that interfaces to JPA repository. So let me call it as blog repository. Which takes a blog and a long. That's it. And I have to annotate this guy with the repository. Not this one. So that's it, right? So I have my entire JPA layer or entire database layer available. I've also incorporated H2, so everything is done for me. I have an entity, so I can do save, find everything, find by ID, and all those things inside. So what I can do is, like, I have to inject some data. So let me go ahead and do some data here. So for that, I'm going to use the component runner. That's command line runner. That extends command line runner. And then implement its member, which is nothing but a run. So again, but I have to pass in a repository here, so I'll just pass in a repository. Which is nothing but a blog repository. So that's it, right? So I have this thing available now. So what I have to do here is just inject some data inside and then see whether the data is populated when it's booting up. So what I can do, just go ahead and create a list of a blog with ID, with some content, or with some title and some content. I can copy and do the same. Put something else here. Put Vue.js here, since we're talking about that. So it's plain simple thing. So what I do next is, like, I have to save this. So let me do for each, and then I call this repository.save, pass in the entity. So that's it, right? So I just take all those values, take the list, run through the list, and save those values there. And just to check when it's booting up whether everything is saved, what I can do is, like, I can do find all dot for each again, and then print that thing. So I can stop and rerun it. So it's very simple, right? So you have one single page of application. So pinch zooming out again. So you have one single application with just 3 different or 4 lines more. You were able to create an application that was able to do save, that was able to find everything, that was able to delete, and all those things. So you have some backend running already, right? So that's very simple that's good about Spring Boot. It makes it really easy. And with Kotlin, it's, again, really easy or really shortened syntax. Correct? But what about Vue? So people who have used Vue, why do you like Vue? No reasons? Just like that? Or you hate all other frameworks, that's why you like Vue? Okay. We have a React fan here. Okay, great. So about Vue. Vue is actually an indie developed framework, which means, like, no big company is behind the generation of Vue, or people who are developing Vue is basically individually developed. So that's one thing. And second thing is, like, it has really an awesome community. People in Vue really tend to help a lot, and it makes it very simple for you to get started and running. And if you're stuck up anywhere, the community is there to help you out. And it's really simple and really easy. Just like Spring Boot, how Spring Boot makes development of web development in Java pretty easy. The same way, Vue actually helps. It makes it very simple to generate components. It makes it very simple to understand the things. And it also has a very easy structure to follow and get through it. And if you want to learn Vue today, for the people who haven't used Vue, the only place that you have to go is like their own website, Vue.js.org, which has superb documentation with which you can learn everything out of it. So it has clear flow of how you have to learn the entire framework, and you will get a lot of information from that single website itself. So if you don't know about Vue, just get over to that website and get to know about Vue again. So if you're like me, the very first thing I will go and check if I'm going to do a project is go to GitHub and watch out for the stars, like how many stars that this project has and who is using that thing. For me, Angular, the one framework that everybody uses before, Angular.js I was talking about, not the Angular 8. So it has like 48K stars. And React has 2.5 times more than what Angular had. It's like 129K. But Vue.js has the biggest one, which is like 2.6 times, which is like around 140K. So it's like everybody is using it. It's even surpassed React. Take a note. Vue is cool. The reason why Vue is cool is like it's progressive. So what do you mean by progressive here? Any guesses? Come on, it's just an English word, right? So progressive. So this is your web application, right? The front end of your application. It has nothing but HTML and JavaScript in it, and some CSS. Who loves writing CSS here? OK, we have one. OK. So what you can do is, like with Vue, you can just change a certain part of your application and change that into your Vue component and use it along with any other application that you have, any other stuff that you might have. And then you can progressively enhance the other parts of the application. And you can do that again. And finally, you can completely convert your application into a Vue-based application. So that's what the progressive here means. Like, it helps you to progressively enhance your application from one framework to another without having much troubles in doing that. And whatever Vue generates is a reusable web component. You have a single file in which you define everything that turns out to be a web component, and this is a web component that you can use anywhere in your application. It doesn't mean that you have to use Vue, or you have to use it only inside a Vue application. You can use it at any HTML or any place where JavaScript is valid and HTML is valid. So that is another cool thing about Vue. Again, it's simple and easy. So the other most important thing of Vue is like it makes you to write lesser code. That is one of the great things. If you're writing a Hello World application in Angular, in React, and Vue, Vue has very less amount of code than compared to any of its competitor, because it's so close to the native HTML and JavaScript, so it makes it really easy for you to write Vue. So this is one Hello World example. What you have here is nothing but a single, the first line is like you just import the Vue.js module, and then you specify an ID app, which is a holder. This is just an HTML. And inside a script, you define an object called new Vue. That's it. This is just an object. So everything in the world of Vue is object. So you could just have an object in JavaScript, and you define the element, data, and some other stuff inside it. That's it. This is a Vue component. You can use that Vue component anywhere in the system. So we have seen Vue components. So this is the generic structure of Vue component. You can specify a data inside Vue component. So this data is the one that you're going to show in your templates. How many of you know about templates? Okay, so templates are nothing but HTML, right? So you have this HTML, and then you have the data. Inside that HTML, you have to do some data inside. You have to show some values to the customers or the users who are using your application. That is the data. So inside a Vue component, you can just specify a data, which is, again, an object, which is, again, a function, but it's analogous to an object. In JavaScript, everything is an object, right? So it's analogous to object. So you can show this thing entirely inside a Vue component. That's it. So this is the one that you will represent inside a Vue component. And the data that you're representing here is reactive, which means when you change the data, it automatically changes the view. And you can have certain methods. These are the methods that you might use, like onClick, onHover, or onFocus. You want to call a different function. You want to call another function that goes and talks to your database. All those things you put inside the methods. So the naming itself is so clear and concise here, right? So you have data. This is the data that your front-end or template needs. And you have methods. These are nothing but the methods that you're going to use in your template. That's it. So that's how it's named. It's clear and concise. On the other hand, Vue is reactive. How many of you use Spring Boot reactive here? How many of you love that stuff? Okay. One? Surprising. OK. So Vue is also reactive, which means like the entire thing is reactive. So you have this Vue component, which is nothing but your HTML. Consider this combination of HTML and JavaScript. And every Vue component that you're starting will have a watcher in it. This watcher is nothing but a person who's consider himself as a person who is sitting there and looking for any changes that is happening in the system, or looking for any changes that the particular data has in it. So this is a guy who sits there and watches what's happening there. And then you have this data, where you define all the data that is required for your entire component to showcase to you. And finally, you have this render. Render is nothing but HTML, which actually shows whatever things that you want to show. It's like the presentation format of it. So that's basically it. So a Vue component has a watcher, which sits and watches whatever happening inside the data, and based on that, it goes and updates a render field. That's it. So if you put that into this picture, it's like you have a Vue component with a watcher, and the data have a getter and setters. So this basically triggers the rendering part of it. And then you have the render, which actually renders the virtual DOM 3. Everybody knows about virtual DOM 3, right? Yes. OK. So that's it. So when you set any value to your data, so that's what your first intention is, like you're setting a value to the data. Once you set a value to the data will go and notify the watcher. The watcher lives inside the Vue component. It goes and notifies the watcher. OK, look, the data that you're looking into has been changed. And the watcher, what it does is like it either renders. If it's already rendered, it will re-render this entire application again. So it goes and tells, OK, it's time for you to render. And the render function will look and then render the virtual DOM 3 again. And once the virtual DOM 3 is rendered, what it does is like it goes back and renders the DOM 3 that you actually have. That is your HTML page. And any interactions that you do on the system or on the browser, what it does is like you're going to get a value from the data. And this data is collected as a dependency and stored in the watcher. That's basically what's happening. So watcher is responsible for looking out for any changes in the system. And if there is a change, watcher goes and nudges the render to change the DOM. That's it. That's what watcher does. And then you have this data, which has a getter and setter. When you set a new value to the data, it goes and tells the watcher, go and change everything that you have in the render. Clear? OK. And in Vue.js, everything is object. In JavaScript, again, everything is an object. So when you go back, Vue.js, everything is object too, which means like whatever you're generating, whatever you're making, a component that you're defining is an object. That's it. So let's go ahead and create a Vue.js app, and then try to connect with the backend that we already have it running, and then see what happens now. So let me go back to the terminal again. So Vue.js has CLI, which is similar to Create React App, ng-CLI. Anybody used about ng-CLI or Create React App? Yep. So it's like just bootstrapping the entire application for you. It sets up all the default values that you might need to generate an application. So in Vue, we have something called Vue CLI. So it is an NPM module. You can install with npm install Vue CLI. And once you've installed, you have this Vue command available. You can go ahead and type Vue create, give a name. OK, so let me call it as block Vue. So what it does is like it asks me a bunch of questions, and based on the question, it generates me the entire application that I might need. So I'll go ahead and show the manual select features. So here you can choose a Babel. Babel is a transpiler that helps you to transpile a format of code into another format of code. How many of you don't know about Babel here? OK, we have few. So it's similar to, you can consider this as similar to a thing that converts Kotlin into Java and then run in a JVM. It's similar to convert JavaScript into JavaScript and then run in JavaScript machines. That's what Babel is all about. And then you have TypeScript. If you want to use TypeScript, you can go ahead and use it. And the routers and Vuex is something like Redux. How many of you know about Redux here? There are a lot of new things here. OK, so Redux is a state management library that all front-end people are using. So if you want, you can add in Vuex also there. And then you have set up other things which is not needed or which is needed based on your purpose. Let me go ahead and choose the default stuffs and use the lin thing. And there are a lot of configuration files that will be generated. So I want to dedicatedly generate them in a separate file. So I'll just generate it. And then I'm just generated the app. That's it. So any application will be generated for me. And the next step is like I can go ahead and run this application and see what it does. So basically what happens now is like it generates the entire boilerplate that I need. Once it's done, it installs all the dependencies that I might need for the application to run. And once it is done, then I can start the application and see how the application is generated. So this is a block view that we have generated. So as you can see here, the node modules are getting installed, which obviously downloads the internet and makes everybody's internet too slow. And you have this entire source repository in which all the things resides. This is your entry point of your application. So this entry point, you're defining importing Vue from the central library, and then using the Vue. That's it. And then you define a component called app.vue, which is where you're going to define everything that you want to do. So this app.vue is a Vue component by itself. As you can see, you have a single, you're exporting that component. That's it. You're not doing anything else. And you have some styles attached to it. And this is the template. Template are nothing but your HTML. So inside the HTML, you're specifying an image and a hello world. This hello world is another component that you have it here. So this is another component. Here you have list of things inside, some page, and that's it. So it also is exported as a component. So we can go back and see here. Okay, this is because it is not setting. Okay, let me go back. Do it install again. Okay, so it's because okay, it went out. But the main reason what happened is like when you're generating a manual application, you require to set up the logging level of the Webpack plugin that we are using. It's not by default set. I thought it will be set by default, but it's not set by default. So that's the error that you have seen. I'm just regenerating the entire application with the default values. This time it should work. Hopefully. No. Okay. Damage control. Okay, I was doing this just before the presentation and everything was working fine. Thanks. Okay, so what we have here, so let me just comment this guy. Save this. And then copy this guy over. Save this. Now let me see what happened. Okay, that's fine. So let me delete this guy. So my application, finally. Okay, the application is running now. So this is my Vue.js application. It's running. Okay. So what it has is the same thing. I'll just remove this extra content that I have it here. So which means like it just says one value here. So I can go back here. It just removed all those extra contents that I had here. It just had a logo and then this thing. So what I can do now is like again, okay, so basically what I'm trying to do now is like list down the blocks that I have in my backend application and show it here. That's what I'm trying to do. So what I can do first is like I can rename this component into something else. So I can rename it to block listing, block list. So once I renamed it, I have to rename it here also. So let me go ahead and rename it here. So yes, it's done. My application is not broken. Perfect. So once I've done this, I can say a title here instead of a message. So I can say title equals to blog list. Or I can also give a message, welcome to Spring IO. Okay, it's the end of the conference, but still Spring IO 2019. Can give this thing. So these are called as the properties or props that you add inside your application or add to this component. So inside the component, you have defined one prop, which is the message, which we have already seen, and its type. So you can also go ahead and specify a title and then say it's a string. So that's it, right? So here I've done this, and then I can go and say h2, it's 2, and then I can say title. So as you can see here, the title gets updated. So I have this h2 here. These are like simple things that you can do. And then I have to show a list. So what I will do is like I can show a list, LUL. This is simple HTML. So you can say UL, and then you can say li content1, and then you can say content2. So you can see here that my content1 and content2 are getting added in here. So why it's showing a single? It's because of this simple CSS. I can remove this guy, and it should show in a drop-down way. So next, what I can do is like instead of using this content, I can just use the data that we have seen so far. So how to use the data? It's as simple as this. You go and add a data property here, data, and then say it's a function. Return the value of return. Okay, so let's call it as blocks, since that's what we are going to do, and give an array. So let it be content1 and content2. And here, what I can do is like I can remove this guy, and then I say put a for loop here. So v for, which is a for loop that I have, and then I can say item comma index in the blocks that I have. And I have to specify a key. So to specify a key, this is very similar to React. So key basically here uses to identify each of that element individually. It's like an identifier that you have to put inside your database, your unique key or the primary key identifier, something similar to that. It's very similar to that. So I put index here, which is a unique value because it's iterating through that array of blocks, and then have an index which is like 0, 1, 2. That will be added as a key. It should be unique. And I have this item. All I have to do is like add this item inside here. So this should have the same thing. So you can see my application didn't render, so I'm using a data now. But what I basically want to use is like I have to hit my backend of the application and then get the data from there. So for that, I need to have a method. So what I can do is I can go ahead and say methods, which is an object. So here I can define list of functions which I can call from my interface or from my Vue component. So I'm going to get blocks as a function. So it's a function. So what it does is like it returns this component or this array for now. And all I have to do is like this dot get blocks. That's it. So now I have something, so it should be working. So yes, it's working. So what I'm doing here is nothing but instead of directly giving a value, I'm calling a method or a function. And from that function, I'm just going and returning a value here. But here, I can also do this thing. I can say this dot blocks. So this is this Vue component. This dot blocks. Blocks is the data that is available here, which is equal to this content. So this will not show you anything. Hopefully, this should have shown something. What I'm doing wrong. Yes. Okay. Okay. It should be returned. Sorry. I'm 2 steps ahead now. Okay. So it should return a value. So it should have something here. So yes. So what I have to do, I have to connect to the third server. Or the server that I have to connect is running on localhost 8080. So I can use a simple fetch here. Fetch. Okay. Fetch. And then I get a response. Okay, so here in the for the fetching, I should go to the blocks endpoint, which is where my entire application will return a blocks. And then I have to just do response.json. And I have something here which is blogs. So just before that, we can see how the content is. So with Spring Data Resource, you have content something like this. So it gives you a content like this, but it's actually inside the embedded, which is inside the blocks, and it has a list of things that you have it here. So all I have to do is like the same thing. This dot blocks is equal to the contents of this thing. Okay. So it's like blocks dot embedded dot blocks. So it won't show me anything because of the CORS. You have to enable CORS, which we haven't done yet. So I'll go back to my app. And what I can do is like I can enable REST repository here. So repository REST resource. And I can specify cross origin with some values, or sorry, origins. So my application is running on 8081, so I just have to specify that. Restart my application. So you can see here something is there. So it comes out here. So what I have to do now is like just to change my application. So here I'm just printing this item. So it's not ideal. It should not be item. It should be item.title. And hopefully this should be h3. And then let's put a color to it. So you can see here it's there, and I have something called content. So let me add the content too. And line to separate them. Let me add some width to the line to make it look appealing. So just like that. So that's it. Like you have this entire listing page for the blog with nothing done, and the amount of code that you have written is just this one component. Now we can go ahead and use this view component, or okay, it's named as hello world, but you can change it to block listing and things like that. But you can have the single component and then use it anywhere in your application. You can use it multiple times. You can use it at any point of time. So that's how Vue makes it really simple. And it's like what you have done is like you have defined a data, and also you have defined a list of methods inside the data. That's it. So you haven't done here. The reason why I haven't returned anything and using this thing is like this entire chunk of code will run asynchronously. It's not synchronous running. It's asynchronous running. So your event loop goes away from it. It doesn't return anything. So it will be set as empty. And once this fetch is completed, once you get the data back, then it sets a value inside this .blocks, which updates a view, re-renders a tree. So that's it. So that's how it works. So that's how Vue makes it really simple for you to write the front end. And also with Spring Boot, you can write a minimal number of code and then write everything out of the box, runs out of the box. So JHipster. So then this is the last part of the presentation, JHipster. So what is JHipster? Anybody who have used it? Yes? What is JHipster? Yes, correct. So it's a generator that helps you to generate a full stack application, but it's nothing but Java hipster. And what it does is we like to call them as a development platform because it tries to generate the application, the entire application, and also it helps you to develop and deploy applications. You get the CI/CD out of the box. You get Kubernetes configuration or microservices application, everything right out of the box. It lists down everything that you need as a developer to start working on from day one, and just focus on your functionality. You can go ahead and customize it because whatever we are generating are nothing but simple Spring Boot plus single page applications. So why JHipster? Why? Yes? Yes, it's fast to start. Yes. Any other? Nope. It's faster development. It helps you to start really fast, go faster. And as a developer, it increases your experience because there might be people who will not know about the backend side of the application. They can go ahead and generate the application and understand how the backend is wired. For the people who don't know the front end, they can go and find out how the front end is wired. The main problem with the software development, at least now, is like wiring things takes a longer time than doing stuff. So with JHipster, it's pretty easy for you to develop faster, and it increases your experience. That's one thing. And we also make sure that we always have latest libraries and frameworks incorporated, which means that currently we have Java 12 based Docker images and everything, and we also use Jib for creating Docker files, which is much faster than compared to normal Docker build. So it's like we always try to find out the latest libraries and frameworks and make sure that we are incorporating that in the application. That makes you to develop applications much more faster, and you have the latest features also enabled. And finally, it also adds in a learning for you, so it increases the learning as a developer, so you can get to know different stuffs. And for me personally, it helped a lot to understand how the Kubernetes configuration and things like that, or how to deploy and run microservices and things like that. So that's also one other thing. So let's go and see how we can generate blueprint of JHipster with Vue.js. So let me go back, close this guy. Close this guy, close this guy, go back here. Yes, okay. So all I have to do to run JHipster is like to JHipster, and then hit enter. It asks me a set of questions. I just answer those questions, and it helps me to generate an application. But since we are talking about Blueprint, which is not available as a part of the core generator, it's something extended out of the core generator. So what you have to do is like you have to specify this thing, --- blueprint Vue.js. And what it does is like it goes ahead and sticks. Okay. Oops. Okay, great demo that I have. Okay, hopefully I have a backup for this. Okay, I have a backup. I don't know what happened. Okay. Okay, let's try and do debugging here. So JHipster works. Okay, so I think the dependency library is missing here. That's why it's throwing me an error. So let me try to install. So this is an additional library that you have, jhipster-vue.js, which is an additional library that you have to install it in your system. And with that, you can also generate a Vue.js based application. So before that. Have some project here, so let me try one more time. No. Fantastic. Okay. Let me just go for the backup project and see where I have the backup project. All my trials went really good, but not the application original demo. Okay. Yeah, okay, I have it here. Yes, okay, so I have it here. This is a basic application that is generated with JHipster. So what it basically does is like, so when you run JHipster, it basically asks you a set of questions, and based on the questions, it tries to generate an application for you. So I have an option to choose between monolith and microservice. So I'll just use the monolith here, the base name of your application, the package name for the Java application, and the registry if you want to use. And then it asks you whether which kind of authentication that you want to use, either it be JWT or HTTP or OAuth 2 session authentication. So you can choose this thing, and we will configure the entire thing for you. So it goes, we'll just select the JWT authentication, the database that we have to use, the database for the production, and also for the development. You can choose different databases. We'll try to configure that inside there. And also we have the Spring Cache abstraction, which you can use for abstracting all those entities or caching all those things. You can also add in a second level cache there. You can choose between Maven and Gradle here. And how many of you are Maven fans here? Still? Okay. Okay, great. So you can also choose between other technologies here, something like Elasticsearch and things like that. So if you have used --blueprint Vue.js, here the only thing that would be changed is like you will have an option called Vue.js. That's the one thing that will be added, and it will generate an entire front-end application for you. So basically, you can, where was it? Okay, here is it. No, not this. What? Yes, here it is, and it is a Gradle application. So it's like I just have to run Gradle W. Okay, I think something, some problem with my node modules, but I'm not too sure about it. That's the reason why it is not working as expected. Okay, so what it does is like it generates up. I have generated an application. It is a plain Spring Boot based application. I can show the application. So I can this is the application that is generated, a plain Java-based application with all the Docker images that you might need to run the application, with also the Java part, which is complete Spring Boot-based application. There is nothing fancy inside there. And you have this web app, which is completely made up of Vue and TypeScript. So we have written the entire front-end application in TypeScript, and it also has Vue components sprinkled over it. And it uses all the principles that you might want in a Vue-based application. That's clearly segregated, like you have an admin module which has all those pages. Everything is segregated into its own modules, and all those best practices that you need to follow when you're trying to generate a Vue.js. And if you want to learn Vue.js, you can go to their website first, and if you still want to have a practical information of how to align your application, or how to lay out your application, you can check this out, because it is completely following the best practices that is listed by the community. So here, my application is started, so let me go ahead here. So here, so this is the application that is generated, and it runs in Vue. So it runs in Vue. You have all those pages that you will have in JHipster, basic application generator. You have a user management module. You have the metrics, which lists down all the metrics of the JVM, cache statistics, and HTTP request, and all those things. It even has logging pages. So the basic difference here is like the page loading is much more faster than compared with the modules or JHipster modules, JHipster front-end that we are generating with AngularJS as well as React. So that is one of the major advantages that we have. The entire chunk that we are sending, our resources that we are sending to the front-end is still in kilobytes. It's not in megabytes. That's also one of the biggest advantages that we have when we're trying to when we move to Vue.js. So as you can see, this application has 1372 loggers, which is like a huge set of DOM tree that will be generated for you. But the page actually loaded pretty quickly than compared with any other stuffs. You have this API, which again uses Swagger API component, so you can see what your resources and things like that does. So this is basically what will be generated by JHipster and Vue.js. And we just released our version 1.0, and probably we are looking forward to move forward to to make it even more better and awesome. Any questions so far? Nope. Okay. Vue is actually small. When I say small, when you take Angular into picture, it actually goes up to 2.34 megabytes for the entire production-ready application that we are generating. It has a lot of components inside. It has at least 15 to 20 pages inside. So it takes around 2.34 with all the polyfills. Without polyfills, it's around 1.33 megabytes. On the other hand, React takes almost 1 megabyte. So it's not gzip data. We haven't gzipped it, but this is what we're generating and the generated production output of Webpack. And finally, Vue.js, it has just 571 kilobytes. That's more than 50% of reduction than compared with Angular. So that's one of the important things. For the front-end applications, the size here matters a lot. The amount of things that you're sending to your front-end as a resource makes your application faster or slower. That's very important to understand. If you're developing a web-based application, the size matters, actually. So what you can do is here is like you can split those entire chunks into multiple chunks to make sure that you're sending correct amount of data. But again, from 2.34 megabytes to 571 kilobytes, it's like huge improvement for your application. Because the entire library of Vue is pretty small. In Angular, for 2.34, it takes more than 60% of the space has been taken by the library itself. And remaining 40% is the code that we actually generate. On the other hand, in a Vue, the library is so small that you can gzip into 20 kilobytes. That's it. It's just 20 kilobytes that's added to your payload. So Vue, the building of Vue is also fast too. As a developer, this is some interesting fact for me or some interesting metric that I'm going to use that helps me to understand how Vue is actually built into. It's really fast in building Vue. For example, writing Angular for a production build, it takes almost 29 seconds to complete. Imagine you're running it in your browsers or in your CI builds for a production build. Every build takes 29 seconds to complete it. And in React, it's 24 seconds. This 5 seconds improvement is not a small thing. It's a really big thing. Because when you're running thousands of times, then it multiplies into that factor. On the other hand, in Vue, it takes just 22 seconds. Again, you might be surprised it's not in 10s or 15s, but it's not the case. Having 7 seconds more to do the build is huge number of time that you have it. So that's why Vue is actually helping in a lot of things. And also one other thing is based on the personal preference or based on running the applications in multiple frameworks, since I've worked on all these 3 frameworks, it's pretty easy for you to understand the Vue code. For a backend developer, it's very easy for him to understand the Vue code than compared with something that is written on React with Redux sprinkled over it. And Angular, on the other hand, TypeScript makes it a little bit easier for us to understand. But again, Vue.js has its own advantage than compared to any other thing. Okay. Thanks for your time. Thank you.